like to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Alia. I go by Alia Synesthesia usually when it comes to music or art. And I live in Toronto, Canada. I'm originally from Siberia. Um, yep, and I'm a multidisciplinary artist. So basically, I do mixed media art as well as music. But like, I guess the emphasis is usually for me on music.
That's brilliant. I'm from Siberia.
Yeah, all the way from Siberia.
Wow, but that's a cold place.
Yeah.
Very cold. Is that your real name, Alia? Alia?
My real name is Alla, but basically it's a Russian name. That's why usually like I go by Alia because in Russian, um, there's usually people have kind of two names, one the official one and the other one how family calls them. So yeah, so basically Alla was my passport name, and the way my family called me was Alia. But yeah, but like for English people, it's hard to pronounce Alia because like
Yeah.
the soft ya on the end. So I just I came up with the closest Alia.
And the synthenasia, where did that come from?
Synesthesia. Yeah, that came from basically I read a while about this because like I didn't know that this is a thing. Um, but basically, some people are synesthesic, which means that for them, for instance, music can be connected to visual art. And for instance, when they close the eyes and they hear music, they can also see visuals, and it's just linked on a neurological level. And synesthesias can be of various types. For instance, visuals and sound, or it can be touch and visuals, or basically it's connection of one or two senses. Um, and I am synesthetic, so that I felt like this is pretty appropriate.
Yeah, but it's a really cool name, isn't it? It really is a cool name. I like that.
Yeah, and it's really hard to pronounce for people, and
It
they
is. Yes,
constantly
I
like,
won't
yeah,
meet one of them.
yeah.
But it is a great name. It really goes well.
Thank you.
You're welcome. What were your musical influences, and how did you get into music?
Ooh, I draw on a whole range of influences. I guess I'm kind of situated between one or two scenes, musical scenes at all times. My introduction was from like dark wave and industrial scene mostly. I started playing shows through local Toronto goth, I guess, kind of community. The first show I ever played was for essentially in a goth club. Um, but my music on average draws on more than one inspiration at all times. So I do like Skinny Puppy, I do like Ministry, I do like Nine Inch Nails, but my music doesn't sound like any of them. Well, sometimes it does, but like not to the same extent that other artists, for instance, sound like them, right? A lot of influence came from my music education. So I have basically I'm classically trained, so it's a lot of classical music to go through, and yeah, I definitely have symphonic influences in my music as well. And some of it comes from metal. Um, I like progressive metal, like Mastodon, Gajira, Porcupine Tree. Yeah, so it's a mixed bag.
It really is a varied choice. That's brilliant. That's brilliant. Um, your album. Oh, I've got to remember its name now. Sorry about that.
Anhedonia, that one.
That's the one, yeah. And Eternal Merch Girl. That is brilliant.
Yeah, it's a bit of a cheeky joke actually. Because we were just talking about sometimes how women, especially when show is happening, women sometimes for whatever reason often brand it as personnel or bartenders or merch girls, even though sometimes they can be performers on the show. And it's like this case of mistaken identity sometimes happens at the show. So that song is about being an eternal merch girl, even though you might be someone else, but you're going to be constantly mistaken for a merch girl.
But it's a great song. It really
Oh,
is.
thank
I
you.
really do like that. I mean, that's got played fair few times. But so is the album. But that particular song, I just think it's brilliant. The music in it is just fantastic.
Oh, thanks. What's your favorite, I guess, musical element out of it? What stands out for you?
It's just that musical style that you've got in that actual track. I don't know what it is. It just draws you in, and it's kind of dark. Some of the music in it, some of the melody, but and the lyric and the way your vocals are coming across. It's just I just love it.
Thank you.
Really great song, really great song. But the whole album is a great song. Um, that's great. I mean, and what about your creative process? How do you? I know obviously with that one you've picked it from what's happening. How do you get your lyrics?
Lyrics. Well, I mean, I usually, when I start writing music, I kind of write them like a story. So at first I get some of the images and scenes and what's supposed to go into the album. And then I guess lyrics come after as I narrow down what is the particular situation I'm trying to describe. Overall, I tend to be much more on the abstract side with my lyrics. So I'm kind of trying to think about the situation in a song, but from a very removed perspective. And that's how I usually come up with lyrics. Um, yeah.
That works well. And then you put the melody to it afterwards.
Sometimes yes, or sometimes melody comes before, and I just come up with lyrics as a finishing touch.
Yeah, and you do everything yourself.
Yeah.
That's brilliant. That really is good. Um, and how did you feel with writing a soundtrack to Haxan? Is it Haxan?
Yeah, it's Haxan, and
Yeah.
well, that was a project because the movie itself is almost 2 hours long. Yeah, and I mean, it's very interesting work of cinematographic art in general. It's kind of a hybrid blend between documentary and early horror movie, directed by Benjamin Christensen. So, from the get-go, I kind of felt that my music can thematically complement the film itself, because I draw a lot of hybrid different inspirations in my music already, so I'm kind of like, okay, this is a good match. um, and then pretty much, like as I already mentioned, because I approach writing music from the storytelling perspective, for me it was about narrowing down on the actual chapters in a movie and trying to musically create an accompaniment for the story. Yeah, but I play more than one instrument, some of them badly. So obviously the entire arsenal went into that movie. There's a little bit of bass, there's some cello in it, there's some drums, as well as the synthesized electronic sounds as well. Overall, I tried to make each chapter stand out on its own. So yeah, that was definitely an ordeal. It was a little bit stressful as well because that project was Kickstarter funded. So I was like, damn, I really need to like follow the deadlines, but it was difficult because it's a long movie and it's a long process.
Wow. So how many instruments do you play?
Well, I'll start by I don't play any instrument well. But I play cello, I play bass, I play drums. Originally, I started from keys when I was going through my music training, like in Russia, and then later here. And I sing. So classically trained vocals is probably the most often used instrument by me.
Yeah.
Vocals. Probably secondary would be cello now, but I've been taking lessons for like about 2 years by now, so I'm fairly confident to play it. But like I'm not a fantastic cellist, so
But that doesn't come across in your music. It comes across really well. That's the good part about it, isn't it?
yeah. Well, I mean, studio magic, right?
Yeah, but still, it's still it's good though, isn't it? It's a good achievement to be able to play that many instruments in by one person.
Yeah, I mean, it really gives you a perspective of how different and yet how similar they are, because obviously the music theory unites them all, right? Notes are the same on every instrument, but just like seeing the mechanics of how different they are, like when you play them. It's pretty. It gives a lot of ideas and it's very inspiring.
Yeah, I can imagine. But it's good. I mean, it's working for you. So you're vocally classically trained. So
Correct.
you never thought of like symphonic metal or anything like that?
I have actually one of my like early fascinations was Nightwish.
Yeah.
I think it's one of the very few bands that somehow I heard of back in Russia. Like I remember when I saw them in a Russian magazine for like pop music and stuff, and I'm like, "Whoa, this is really unique," because there was nothing like that in magazines back then. So I saved the article, the interview with the Nightwish, and I'm like, "Oh, this is actually what I really want to do." But I mean, and I tried joining bands for a few years, but unfortunately, with bands, it's really complicated when it comes to dynamics, and you really have to like the people, and you all have to like the music. And I guess when I was making my early attempts to join bands, majority of people that I could draw from were like teenagers, right? So they barely knew what they kind of wanted, and sometimes you start a band with intention to start like a symphonic metal band, but in the process it turns out that people are more into Nickelback or something else, and they kind of want to draw the influences towards their direction. And basically it was just a very frustrating process for me. I tried making symphonic metal solo, but it's also hard because at some point you have to rely on electronic instruments unless you want to write your album for like 5-6 years, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of purism in metal community as well. So if they hear that the drums are synthesized or something, they're like, "Oh, this is not real drums. It's not real metal."
Yeah.
So I mean, I feel like I probably coined kind of a niche for myself where there's the symphonic metal is definitely an influence there, but because I'm a solo musician, there's more than just symphonic metal in the mix.
Yeah. Yeah. And you are right. You've carved out your own kind of style, and it is pretty unique.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm trying.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's good. I mean, it's good to see somebody actually going out there and actually working hard to create something that isn't exactly what other people have done. It's something a little bit new, a bit fresh,
Oh, thanks.
and
I mean,
you've done that.
yeah, I mean, it can be positive, but it also can sometimes like really make you not fit into certain
Yeah,
bills and certain scenes. Yeah, but
yeah,
but yeah, for sure, it's a journey.
yeah. I guess that is the only problem, isn't it? It's getting people to accept that this one is a little bit different. So here you go.
Yeah.
What about your fan base? Whereabouts is that mainly?
Ooh, that's a very interesting question because I have fan bases in a lot of different unusual places.
Mm,
Um, there is this interesting because Toronto is such a hard city to start anything creative in. There is this interesting kind of like a joke story going around that like as a Toronto musician you will never be famous in Toronto. You have to go somewhere to Germany, get famous there, and come back, and here you go, you'll have a fan base.
right.
But it's actually true because Toronto is a very very hard city to get your footing in because they
Mm,
just how the city operates itself. There's a lot of venues that are closing, a lot of creative spaces essentially given for condo developments projects, and because it's hard to make a living for arts especially, that there's no support, places end up closing. um, I have fan bases in pretty strange places. I have some like a fairly small fan base in Hawaii. I have a fan base in New Zealand, and I have a fan base in Japan. And basically, at some point, I was joking about it. Everywhere where there's like mountains and like a sea or ocean, that's where my fan base is gonna be.
all right.
Um, yeah, I mean, there must be also some pretty small following in Europe as well, but I haven't checked that in a while. I just know that like the most devoted fans that I have, for some reason, come from like very interesting places on Earth.
That's very odd, isn't it?
Yeah.
But good. It's good.
Yeah, it's good.
You're hitting places that other people haven't managed to get to, I suppose,
Yeah,
or
I
as
guess.
much. So that, but
Yeah.
Hawaii is a really odd one.
Yeah, it is, but like the people are so amazing there. They like it's the first time I remember like I was playing a show there, and there's fog machine, so I can't really see the people in the audience, and it's so quiet. And I'm like, oh my god, did everyone just like leave or something and I can't see anyone? But no, they're just like they're sitting and listening, but so carefully, and like no one is like making a sound, and that's
Oh,
that's that's pretty interesting. That was an eye-opening experience for me.
so rather than getting involved, they're actually taking all the music in.
Yeah,
Wow, that's different.
yeah, definitely,
How
and
did that feel though? How do you? Because obviously, an artist like yourself, you feed off the crowd or the fans.
that's true. But I guess because I have experience in more than one kind of music, with classical
Yeah,
music, people are listening,
yeah,
right?
people are listening. Yeah, that's true.
So yeah, so I wouldn't say that it really surprised me to the point when it would be like some kind of a shock. Like I can adjust on the fly usually to situations like this. But yeah, it was just an interesting experience in general.
Yeah, that's unusual for a musician like yourself. That with that kind of music, you expect people to be kind of up and moving around, but to be sat there like a classical audience,
Yeah,
that's, that's unusual. That's
it is.
brilliant, but unusual. What are your concerts like normally?
What my concerts are like?
Yeah, your gigs like, yeah, what they like.
Yeah, it depends where. So I'm one of those musicians that kind of scales my gigs depending where I'm going. Um, in Toronto, I performed with other musicians as well, because I think that for me particularly, just having extra musicians on stage usually brings the performer out of me in a way that like I know that my duties on stage are fairly relaxed now. I don't need to trigger everything. I don't need to, you know, control the performance, so I can actually go and perform and do something interesting on stage. But when I don't perform with other people, and that's pretty much 90% of all my performances. Like I'm a one-woman show, so I perform with like a laptop, or right now I actually have controller instead of laptop because it's just more interesting. I usually come with my like vocal pedals to do my vocal tricks, and yeah, I mean, for me as a musician, it's a little bit more stressful when I play completely solo, just because I know that like I'm responsible for everything on stage. Um, so yeah, so I think I like as a performer, I'm a little bit more reserved when I travel solo.
Yeah.
But on Twitch performances, for instance, when like I'm comfortably set up in my room, I can go a little bit crazy, so that's always nice.
Brilliant. I like that. What about future plans for you as an artist?
Ooh, that's just so hard to say right now.
Yeah.
I was supposed to be having a South American tour together with Attrition like 2 years ago.
Oh,
2020, this is when it was supposed to happen,
yeah.
but it gets rescheduled every year now. So it's kind of like Schrodinger plans. I don't know if I'm going yet, like we will see, but technically the plans are there. So yeah, there is a South American tour with the festival, Wood Gothic Festival planned for June, July.
Oh,
Other than that, there are a couple of small shows, or more like small. I call them small because I have easier time reaching them than South America.
yeah.
So I have one show in. I'm gonna be appearing on Mysticon in Virginia, which Mysticon is a festival. It's kind of like a science fiction horror convention.
Okay.
So I'll be performing there in the end of February. And also possibly there is a horror festival in Montreal that I will be performing at as well.
Wow.
Other than that, there is no performing plans for now. There's only like negotiations so far. But I mean, if we're going into another lockdown, then I'll have to come up with another online project.
Yeah.
So that's also a possibility. Like I might basically come up with another project for
Yeah.
the second half of winter.
Yeah. What about a new album? Anything planned?
Um, Nothing yet. I feel like Anhedonia only came out in August,
Yeah.
so I'll probably tour that for a bit, tour or more like push it, I
Yeah.
guess, online. Um, but I do have a couple of ideas for the next record yet. I just haven't started working on anything.
Yeah. Well, that's good. I mean, the ideas are there. That's the main thing, isn't it? But
Yeah,
these lockdowns and this COVID is putting a stop to a lot of things, isn't it?
yeah, and it's surprising how it can affect artists, like big or small. People that relied on tours for a living, and
Yeah.
people that relied on tours to promote their music. It's uh, it's just so strange.
It is, and it's very difficult on so many of them, isn't it?
Yeah,
And I think so many of them have got full-time jobs somewhere else because they're not able to support themselves as an artist anymore because of everything stopping.
yeah, for sure. That's definitely was kind of like one of the sad eye-opening moments for me. I always kind of have side hustles to support music career, just because I find that I'm one of those people that I probably will be too anxious to create if I didn't know how I'm paying rent tomorrow. So I do have work on the side from my work as an artist, and that work is remote, so that's pretty great for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was eye opening to kind of hear from my friends that they had to find jobs now because they can't tour, and touring was their main income,
Yeah.
and that's really that's troublesome.
It is. I mean, I won't mention names, but I have spoken to several other artists, and some of them, you're really surprised that they do have full-time other jobs because they say they can't make a living anymore. They just don't get enough income from it. And it's
Yeah,
very sad and shocking, because some of these are fairly big artists, and you think, God, you wouldn't believe that. No way would you believe that. But it's the sad reality of what's happened.
yeah, for sure. And I mean, it touches kind of like big artists and like bands that you wouldn't even think that they are not making enough from their music. There are so many lawsuits happening against Spotify because gradually majority of artists' income migrated to digital spaces. And of course, all those digital platforms like Spotify, right? They're not out there to compensate artists. They're there to stop piracy and make a living out of it, right? They come up
Yeah.
with a different subscription model that will prevent people from pirating because it's inconvenient, but you know.
Yeah, and exactly right. And it's surprising how many artists I've spoken to, and I've said, look, I'm going to do a podcast, going to do this. Am I okay? Yeah, yeah. Use my music. Use it. Use anything you want. Just don't worry. Just use it. And then you get YouTube, then clamp down on you. It's like, really? The artists have said yes, but someone else has said no.
Yeah, it's crazy. And I think that automation also it just creates so many issues for people because for YouTube to flag videos using copyrighted material, this process is automated, right? It's
Yeah,
based on some algorithmic, you know, predicaments that they calculated. Or this music was licensed through DistroKid. Okay, we will flag it, right? But it's just so much harder for artists and people's whose video were flagged because they used the artist's music with the artist's permission. It's just so hard for them to initiate this process of unflagging their videos
yeah,
or their accounts. Yeah, that's
yeah. And
crazy.
it's like myself. I mean, I'm in this to promote any artists. I don't mind who they are, as long as it's not mainstream pop that have got massive labels behind them. It's just all the independent kind of things, and like yourself, and you're trying to promote them, and then there's another company that's not related to the artist trying to stop it, and it's like, why don't you just leave us alone? We're trying to help here.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
that does get very difficult at times. Very difficult. But that's one of those things with YouTube, unfortunately. You have to kind of try and get around it some other way. But it is difficult. It is difficult.
yeah, sure.
Do you find that as well?
Well, I mean, particularly, I don't use YouTube actually, interestingly enough. I don't use social media networks as often as I probably should to promote my music. Um, and I also rely a lot on like self-sufficient models for say doing pre-orders or even like selling my music. I kind of run my own site, and it's difficult because it's a whole range of different issues you have to face, from like maintenance to other things to like troubleshooting stuff. But I think this is a far more this is a better way to go about selling one's music than say signing up for another digital platform that will take its cut but
Yeah.
won't really help you out in any way. So
Yeah, there's so many trying to get your money for all the work you've done.
yeah,
And
and it's
that's,
so difficult as an artist to basically analyze all those platforms and see if they're going to be even useful to you, before you pay for them.
yeah, exactly. You don't know that, do you? It could be literally throwing money at nothing.
Yeah,
Yeah, that's not good. It doesn't give you any stability in what you're trying to do.
yep.
But I will, for sure, after this interview, when I put it online, I will put all the links to you and to your website
Thank you
and
so
everything.
much.
No, that's no problem. That's what it's there for. It's to promote artists. So I will always try and do my best for you.
Thank you.
It's all right. I've put several things up on Facebook. When I've posted something about one of your singles or something, or like your Haxon album, I've put that online as well, so people can try and push it. That's it's just what I'm doing. So I do it for the love of music. So that's it.
Yeah, make sure to tag me and I'll promote it as well.
Thank you very much. Anything else you'd like to add?
I think we covered a lot of grounds and we had a
Yeah,
pretty good conversation. Yeah,
yeah. It's been really
okay.
nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too, finally.
Yeah, it's been a while, hasn't it? It's been taken. Yeah. So all things were going different ways, and I thought, oh my goodness, we're never going to get there, but we did.
Now here we are. Yep.
Yeah. So thank you very much for your time, and it has been really lovely to talk to you.
Thank you, likewise.